everyone, my name is Carson. I am COS on YouTube, and this is my Monday videos, my History Mystery Monday. If you are new here, thank you for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. I hope you come back every Mondays and occasionally Fridays, so if you want to be notified about those, hit the subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you will be notified. And if you want to follow me on any social medias, links are down below. Any sources that I use as research for these videos are down below as well. Today, we are continuing with the saga of Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France's life story before her untimely beheading that kicked the French Revolution off. And we're continuing this. Yes, in the past two videos, I've had a different makeup look. I had to film those yesterday. I'm pretty sure I will be able to finish in this video because I did look at the rest of my notes from yesterday after finishing, and I'm pretty sure I can get all of it done in this video. So yeah, so this is part 3 about Marie Antoinette's life. If you like this makeup look as well, links are down below to the channel, my second channel, which is just straight makeup, anything related to makeup, maybe even reviews later on. If you liked my makeup in the other parts, the part 1 and part 2, I will also put that down below as well for that video if you'd like to learn how I did that makeup too. And if you do any of those or do something similar for my socials, for my MUA channel, please send them to me. Please send them to me. I love to see it. So if you guys do anything like that, send it that way. But anyways, let's get started into the rest of the saga. Now, if you hear any snoring or anything like that, any noises throughout this video, my cat, Duncan, he is down here. He's taking a nap. He wanted to be in here with me while I'm doing this. So if you hear any snorts or anything like that, just ignore it. It's him. So yeah, but let's get started. So where we left off, we were talking about Marie getting Louis to revoke the ban on the play The Marriage of Figaro, and the fact that she got another chateau that was 6 million livres at the time, and the fact that France is still in debt and that money could have been used to pay off towards the debt, but it wasn't. So then Marie now has 3 chateaus that she doesn't need. France is still in debt. On March 27th of 1785, Marie actually gave birth to their second son, Louis Charles. He is then dubbed the Duke of Normandy. It was questioned that after Louis Charles's birth, 9 months after, her friend, so the one who we talked about earlier, who was Count Axel von Fersen, who was the Swedish ambassador, Swedish diplomat, the one I told you about that earlier. They were actually questioning if this child or even some of her other children were actually his, because during this time period when they were born, he was still there. He's snoring. I'm sorry if you hear that. And because of this, Fersen also had to speak up about it and saying that the date didn't line up with him being the dad. It actually lined up with Louis and Marie having conjugal visits during this time while he was visiting. And everybody in Palace of Versailles knew that these conjugal visits between Marie and Louis were actually happening. So Count Fersen was like, nope, ain't me. It was Louis' child. Told y'all, like, it's not me. Louis the dad for all these children. I don't know why y'all want to make rumors. And Marie and Louis both were spending not just the visits, just in general, they were spending a lot of time together with each other, more than usual. But their second daughter and their last child was born. Her name was Marie Sophie Helena Beatrix, and her nickname was Madame Sophie. And she was born July 9th of 1786, but sadly she did pass away 11 months later on June 19th of 1787. It wasn't really said why she passed away. I think, you know, just in those times, children didn't have a high mortality rate, you know, and that's why everybody had a bunch of kids, because whoever was going to live was going to live and grow to however old they were going to become, and hopefully not get sick, especially during that time. And Madame Berry, like we talked about in the past video, she actually pops back up during this time in 1785 because of the diamond necklace scandal. I can make a whole nother video if you guys would like. Let me know down in the comments, please. During this time, her son Louis Joseph, the first one, he actually contracted tuberculosis and actually passed away on June 4th at the age of 7.5, which of course affected Marie and Louis. But the French people, they ain't care. They ain't give a shit, honestly. Because, you know, the French people already hated her, already hated Louis at this point. And the fact that one of their children passed away, they're like, well, who cares? Our people are passing away too. Our children are even passing away too. You know, we don't really care, honestly. And with the French people, at this time especially, they cared more about this meeting that was coming up. It was called the Estates General Meeting. It was to resolve the bread crisis that was still going on at this time, years later. A result of this caused the French Revolution to begin. So, in the result of the Estates General Meeting, this is why the French Revolution began. Because right after this happened, it kicked off. Now, I will talk more, you know, obviously about that when I actually make the French Revolution video. French Revolution has begun now. Marie replaced, during this time, the recent commander, and she put in place Pierre Victor, and she thought that putting Pierre Victor in charge at this time and have mercenary Swiss troops put a stop to the beginning of the revolution, that this was going to help during this, because the reason why she got Pierre Victor to become the new commander and tried to get Swiss troops to put a stop, because there was rioting going on in Paris now due to the Estates General Meeting. This brought on the storming of Bastille on July 14th. And now, if you know anything about that, this is why on Bastille Day, on July 14th, this is why it is celebrated, was because it was the storming of Bastille. The French people gained it away from the monarchs, and this was also bringing on independence for the French people. During that version, Breterel, he is another person in this, he was another commander, another person in the courts. They were representing Marie in the European courts at this time, because obviously she can't be there herself because they're going on in Paris. She can't be in the European courts, and Louis can't either. So Fersen and Breterel, Louis and her were making plans to escape France at this time, and she was in negotiations with some of the leaders of the French Revolution to make an escape plan for them to get out of Dodge, don't get hurt, no, their family gets hurt, nobody gets hurt. But with this happening, There were so many plots that Marie came up with, but then were put to a stop, to a halt, because Louis didn't like them. Louis thought they were stupid or they weren't gonna work. So then she had come up with more plans and come up with more plans, and Louis kept saying, no, that's not gonna work, we're not gonna do that, that won't work, blah 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 blah. Then there was a plan, and they then ended up doing this plan, but because of this was a last minute plan, it failed horribly, and this actually caused them to be captured. And this plot that was put on by the family, and it was the last ditch effort, it was for them to pose as servants to a fake Russian princess, or fake baroness, and her name was Madame de Croft. So the baroness was actually being paid by the governess of the children, and her name was Louis Elizabeth de Cory de Trezel. This attempt was on June 21st of 1791. It was to take off to the royal stronghold of Montmead, who was outside of Paris. The fact that the family even tried to escape Paris, French people, they lost the rest of the respect that they had for Marie and Louis. They were over it. Like they were like on thin ice, like the thinnest ice you could probably think of. Louis and Marie with the French people, and the fact that they tried to escape after this was started happening. French people were like, really, you do all this stuff, you mess with our country, you take all of our money, you don't help us, and then you're just gonna run off? You just think you're just gonna run off and escape? No, you're gonna pay for that. You're gonna pay for the consequences of your actions, my dude. While Marie, Louis, their servants, Louis, Elizabeth, their children were taken back to Paris, the French people, they were insulting the crap out of the family. At this point was the lowest that the French monarchs have ever been in history. Antoine Barnabé, he was a rep. He was one of the reps for the National Constituent Assembly, if I can say that word properly. He was one of the three that actually brought the family back to Paris, and he personally protected Marie himself from the crowns, and he and all the other ones, they actually took pity on the royal family because they saw how they were treated, and they were like, you know, they're just kind of people. I mean, even though they did a shitty job with our country, I can see that they're just people. This happening, Antoine taking care of them and protecting them, because of him, the family didn't have to face any trials or any public consequences of the escape that they just tried to attempt. So they weren't tried for escaping. They were tried for multiple other charges, which I'll get into, but at least one of the charges was not going to be for, you know, up and running away from their own country that they fucked up, you know. Marie's main bed chamber maid, or how they call her, First Lady of the Bedchamber. Her name was Madame Campan. She had said during the night that she noticed that Marie, in one single night, the queen's hair turned as white as that of a 70-year-old woman. So because of all this stress, her hair just went completely white. And she knew what was going to happen sooner or later. And because of this, it scared the absolute crap out of her. Now, if you've ever seen Vikings, the later seasons, if you know the character Lagatha. She had very just blonde hair in general. She had regular blonde hair, and after a battle, she was so shocked and so freaked out that her hair even turned like completely white overnight. And that basically was the same thing that happened to Marie. The family itself was guarded day, night until the storming of the trellis on August 10th of 1792, which I'll talk about a little bit later. They were held by 4 guards when all of this was happening at all times. Even before this happened, there was 4 guards always on duty, always watching the family, day and night, day and night. And their bedroom door was never closed, obviously, because the guards had to see everything that they were doing. Marie was noticed at this time that her physical body and her physical demeanor was just deteriorating. Not just only her hair turning completely white overnight, just she started to become frail, and she wasn't really doing anything physically and, you know, motivating. She basically was just sitting there the whole entire time. Leopold and Francis II, on behalf of Marie, they declared war on Austria on April 20th, 1792, and because of this, she's also viewed as an enemy to France now and to Austria. Well, she was already an enemy to France basically at this time, but especially to Austria, she was now viewed as an enemy, and there was nobody going to help her. Louis kept denying and vetoing ideas that Marie had that had restricted his powers. So Marie was trying to come up with anything to stop Louis from messing up more than what they've already done, and he kept denying it, vetoing it, denying, vetoing it. Like, he was like, no, you know, I'm still ruler even though we're captured right now. And when this was happening, Maria being vetoed every like 5 seconds, they were given the names Madame and Monsieur Veto because of all the vetoing that was happening. Antoinette, that we were talking about a little bit ago, he remained their most important supporter at this time and the advisor to Marie, as long as he met demands, like her own demands. So he had to be able to do this, this, and this, and keep a hold of this, keep doing this, and I will let you be my advisor, and we can possibly get out of this, hopefully. There were so many people in court during this time, in the government court, like from all parties from every single country. They were all in the French court during this time, and they denounced Marie's roles. And this happening, she begged Louis, the fact that she was relieved of her duties in the government court, she begged Louis, because Louis still had his power, he vetoed all her restricted ideas, but he still had power, so she begged him to disband the government group, which he did, and this caused him to give up majority of his ability in court. Because of this, Marie doing this, now Louis really doesn't have any say in court, and most of the majority of what they even still, the little bit of like leniency and majority voting that they had in the court, that's gone now. That happening on June 20th, a mob broke in. They broke into the trellises where the royal family was being held by all the guards and everything. This is where they've been since they were captured and were brought back to Paris. Marie, with her children behind her, and the mob in front of her, hurling insults and threatening their lives for betraying France. And she just stood there, guarded her children, and just sure knew it was gonna come. She was just like, bring it on. And you think I care anymore? No, I don't care anymore. Go ahead. The Brunswick Manifesto was made on July 25th about that if the royal family was harmed, the foreign powers would storm and destroy Paris. So this was made in the European courts that the other two were being the ambassadors for Marie and standing up for Marie and them. They were the ones who actually made this happen. Because of that is what put forward the plans for August 10th. An angry mob approached to force the family out. You remember the Swiss troops that were supposed to help guard? They were massacred by this mob. And this only took 90 minutes to happen. On the 13th, they imprisoned the family in the tower of Square de Temple and the Marais, which was basically like being imprisoned in the Tower of London, if you know anything about the Tower of London. This is just basically the French version. A week later, the September massacres happened in the La Force prison, which I can make a whole video about that because that's a lot of information as well. There's multiple videos that could be made. If you guys want that, let me know, obviously. On September 21st, the fall of the monarch happened and was announced by the National Convention, which then became the governing body and changed the family's name to Capetes. Louis was then put on trial, charged with treason in December, which he was found guilty of, obviously. And on January 21st of 1793, Louis was condemned to death by beheading with a guillotine. And, you know, obviously with guillotines, the French people love themselves the guillotine. With Louis, which I will make a whole video about Louis the 16th. Marie herself was now considered, now her name was changed, and she was called the Widow Capete. And she was hoping her son, her last remaining son, because the one passed of tuberculosis before, Louis Charles, who was her second son, she was hoping that he was still alive, because she didn't even know at this point if he was still even alive, because on June 3rd he was actually taken away from her. He was taken and was forced to be influenced to try to go against her, Marie herself, especially during court later on. After this, Louis Charles actually passed away June 8th, 1795 from a microbacterial cervical lymphanitis, which is also known as scrofula and the King's Evil, which was not treatable obviously during this time. Everyone knew now what this means for Marie. Some advocated for her, some proposed that they make a swap for French prisoners of war from her brother, who is now the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph, because remember Joseph, he was the king of Bavaria. Now he is now known as the Holy Roman Emperor. Even Thomas Paine, so if you know anything about Thomas Paine, he even said, just exile Marie. Don't kill her, just exile her. Exile her to America, if anything. Like, we'll take her. Who fucking cares? We will take her. If y'all don't want her, give her to us. Marie spent hours trying to see if she could ever see Louis Charles again. So she would sit by a window and she would look out the window every single day hoping that she would see Louis Charles again, but she never did. On the night of August 1st, she was then transferred to a solo cell, and leaving the tower, she bumped her head against the lintel of the door, which gave her basically a concussion. She was put under complete surveillance of guards There was even an escape plan from other guards who took pity on her. But because of this, there were actually other corrupt guards who said that they were going to help Marie and they didn't. And even though they were paid off and everything, they gave the plot away. And Marie then was put in front of the Revolutionary Tribunal on October 14th of 1793, which many thought the decision was already made by this point. They tried to charge her with so many things, such as the alleged orgies that they didn't have, the massacres that happened even though it wasn't even her fault, fraud of sending money to Austria, and then also incest. And that owned by Louis Charles because he was forced to say that about his mother from Jacques Herbert, who Jacques Herbert was the founder and editor of an extremely radical newspaper at the time, especially for the French Revolution. On the morning of October 16th, so 2 days later, Marie was then found guilty of only 3 of the charges: for spending money of the treasury, conspiracy against the Secretary of the State, and high treason. And in which high treason, you know, if you were already found of high treason, you were already sentenced to death. Preparing for her execution, she wanted to wear a black dress because remember, she is still considered the widow capitée because of Louis being murdered and beheaded. But then she was forced by guards to change in front of them to wear a plain white dress that was worn by most widows of French royalty. They cut off all of her hair that she had remaining on her head, basically gave her a buzz cut. They tied her hands extremely tight behind her back, and she had to wear a rope leash around her neck. Marie was made to ride in an open cart. Unlike Louis, Louis was able to ride in a closed carriage. And this ride was an hour long, from the tower to the execution site. It was an hour long, and during this whole entire hour, people were just insulting her right to her face as she just sat there, just taking it with her hands behind her back, just sitting there. She just took it and she didn't say a word, she didn't even flinch. The road that they went down was called the Rue Saint Honor, and it was the first ever administrative district of France. So after the execution of her and Louis, this became where French Parliament were held. Marie, her last words, and this is in French, were "Pardonnez-moi, monsieur, je ne l'ai pas fait exprès." And if you don't know French, this means, "Pardon me, sir, I didn't mean to do it on purpose." And the reason why she said this was because she accidentally stepped on the executioner's shoes when she was going up to the guillotine. Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette Josephine Genet was then executed on October 16th of 1793 at 12:15 p.m. Marie Tussaud, so if you know anything about her, if you know Madame Tussaud's wax figurines, this is her. And she was employed to make Marie Antoinette's death mask, and then her body was thrown into an unmarked grave in the Madeleine Cemetery. The cemetery later then closed the following year on March 15th due to the capacity being pushed to the brink. On January 18th of 1815, Marie and Louis's bodies were both during the Bourbon Restoration after Napoleon fell, and their remains were given a Christian burial. They were placed in Basilica of Saint Denis. And that is the tale of Marie Antoinette Josephine Genet and her life and her story as the last remaining French queens. So I know this was long. I hope you guys stuck with me on this. I know it's going to be a multi-parter. I told you that at the beginning. I told you that at like the beginning of every video. After filming the last video, you know, I honestly didn't even know if this was going to be like a 4-parter. And I do plan to make videos separately about, you know, like Louis himself, the French Revolution itself. I can even make a video about the September Massacre if you guys would actually be interested in it. I make a video about even like the bread wars, the flour wars, or whatever it was, the flour war. I can even make a video about that. So thank you so much. Like I said, thank you so much for actually sticking around and watching this video. Like I said, if you like this video, if you like any of these other parts, please, please, please give them a thumbs up. I would really, really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button as well for History and Mystery Mondays and occasionally Florida Fridays. Hit that bell notification so when I post them, you will be notified. Go follow me on social media. All links down below. Go look at the channel itself. I have a bunch of different videos just like this. Go look at my makeup channel as well if you would want to see how I did any of these makeups for these videos. The videos will be linked as well. Channel will be linked as well. Socials will be linked as well. Any source notes that I have used will be down below. And please, I love y'all. Be safe out there. I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, night, whenever you are actually watching this. And I love y'all. And thanks for watching.